you've worked with Bill Stone.
Mhm.
And what was, I think one of the earlier cave dives was in Mexico. Was it one of like the deepest caves that you went exploring?
Yeah, I mean, I met Bill back in 1994, I guess, and did my first project with him in, um, yeah, I guess it would be uh, somewhere in the late 90s anyway,
Yeah.
95 or 96. Yeah, we were working in what we thought could be the world's deepest vertical cave system. And then a couple years later, we were deploying some technology that he developed to make the first ever three-dimensional map of an underground space, dry or wet. And this was a highly accurate map. And through the years, I've continued to document his efforts with his technological developments that are not just for cave diving or deep ocean, mapping, but his devices are intended to go to space, to Jupiter's moon Europa, to map the liquid ocean beneath the frozen surface. And that mapper that I drove back in like 1997, that was the first iteration of his device, is now a fully autonomous robotic cave mapper. And it's artificially intelligent and can drive into the cave, fetch a map, and come out. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
What was your experience like going into like the deepest cave or one of the deepest caves in Mexico? Was it like partly cave diving and then partly underwater diving? And was it also hard getting to the point to go to the either to the entrance point or to the
Mhm.
cave?
So sometimes I'm purely cave diving, which means I get to a location, go underwater, and stay underwater for all of my exploration. But there's another form of caving, which is sump diving, which means sometimes you're using ropes to travel, like rappel down a chimney of rock or through a waterfall, or climbing into a cave and carrying your gear for long distances underground before you get to a point where you have to fully submerge and stay underwater. That's what sump diving is. And that's probably the most dangerous form of, cave diving exploration, because you might have gone into a cave even miles before you start your dive. And once you're
Hmm.
beyond that sump into the next dry space, that's about as remote as you can get on planet Earth. I mean, there's nobody coming to get you if something goes wrong.
Hmm.
You're really up to your own defenses to get yourself home. And that's the kind of diving that we're doing in central Mexico, and also in parts of the United States, like parts of Mammoth Cave involve sump diving as well. It's hard work. It's really, really hard work, and it requires the support of a team of people to help shuttle equipment.
Hmm. And how long do these sometimes last? Like as far as like from the actual project, because is
Mhm.
it 1 week, a couple months, or
Yeah.
just the whole
Mhm.
time frame?
Well, currently Bill Stone is on an expedition in that part of Mexico right now, and they were intending on spending 3 to 4 months exploring the cave. And most of
Hmm.
that time will be underground. So they'll come out every once in a while to be topside and kind of dry out and eat.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you eat underground, but you're just constantly wasting away with that kind of a physical effort. So it's quite taxing. So a project could be months long. Um, when we do things now. Cave dives in general, for me, the actual diving part is like sort of 1 to 3 hours on average. But I've had some missions that went as long as 22 hours. And then if you're on a sump project, it could be days and days and days inside the cave.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And what are like you spent 22 hours underwater? That's that's a long time. Were
Yeah.
you not afraid of like decompression sickness, or were you not able to get out, or what was the story behind that?
Yeah, so that was a very deep exploration project where we went, quite far into these sort of branching conduits of the cave inside the planet. And the bottom time, so like the swimming diving portion of the mission was about 5 hours at 300 feet deep. And then we had 17 hours of decompression. And decompression is that just slow return to the surface where you're slowly depressurizing your body and being sort of brought back to normal surface pressure again to prevent getting decompression illness or the bends. So on that project, we spent about 12 hours underwater, and then at a depth of about a little over 100 feet. Anyway, we were sort of picked up in a pressurized capsule, so a little pressurized bell. Mm-hmm. We crawled into that, closed the door, and then we were hauled to the surface and locked into a recompression chamber for the next 10 hours to finish the decompression process.
Mm-hmm. In one of your dives, have you ever experienced the bends or decompression sickness? What does that feel like?
Yeah, I was hit by the bends at a place called the Pit. It's actually the picture that's on the very front of my book, Into the Planet. I shot the photo for the cover right mm-hmm. at the location where I felt the first symptoms of the bends. And
yeah.
In my case, it's actually unusual to feel the first symptoms underwater, but I did. So I was about 60 feet deep on my decompression, and I started to feel like as if there were ants crawling around on my thighs inside my dry suit. And I actually thought that's what it was because I was in the middle of the jungle in Mexico. And then I realized pretty quickly that what I was feeling were the first symptoms of decompression illness. And it's kind of like for those people that aren't divers, it kind of helps to visualize what's going on. But if you imagine a soda pop bottle with a cap on it, mm-hmm. there's gas bubbles that are dissolved into the liquid, and you don't see them when you just see that bottle of soda on the shelf, right? But if you shook up that bottle and you took the cap off, what you're doing is you're very quickly releasing the pressure from that bottle, and the bubbles are coming out of solution and fizzing, basically. And mm-hmm. the same thing happens in the human body. When we're under pressure underwater, nitrogen and helium gases are stored in our tissues in very, very, very tiny micro bubbles. And as long as we slowly relieve the pressure by coming up to the surface in very slow steps, then that pressure is relieved naturally. But if we shot to the surface, it would be like ripping the cap off the bottle, and those bubbles would enlarge and fizz and end up causing, anything from discomfort to a rash to paralysis or death.
Mm-hmm. And once you get to the surface, is the treatment basically put you in like a hyperbaric chamber to try to recreate the atmospheric conditions that you were at previously to try to get you back to normal and like slowly raise you up?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So you either have to be evacuated to a recompression chamber where they can sort of squeeze those bubbles back into your body very quickly. Or in my case, in the middle of the jungle, I had to choose to treat myself by going back underwater, which is a really big risk. But it's all you can do when you're back in the middle of the jungle and you can't even walk out. So that's how I started my treatment. And then after I managed to slowly decompress and solve many of the issues, I still had to hike out of the jungle and go to one of these recompression chambers where I had several more treatments in order to deal with some of the damage that had happened to my body.
Mm-hmm. Does it affect if you, like after the experience, did you ever think like it limits your ability to cave dive, or can you recover from it fairly quickly, or what's mm-hmm. that like?
Well, when I finished my treatments in Mexico, the doctor told me to never dive again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that. I read that.
Yeah. And then I went home and I waited for all the symptoms to go away, all the pain and discomfort. And that was about 5 weeks. And then I waited another 5 weeks before I got back in the water again and just slowly resumed my career. But it's always in the back of my mind that once you've been bent, it's more likely that you'll have a second case. So it made me a smarter, better, more conservative diver. But yeah, it's always in the back of my mind that you don't necessarily have to make a mistake to get bent.
Mhm.
We don't fully understand all the reasons why people get bent, and so I'm just more careful about what I do now.